The Wild West, immortalized by Hollywood's silver screen, paints a vivid tapestry of romance. Fearless cowboys locked in epic struggles with Native American tribes, gallant heroes, and radiant ladies who could tame even the most hardened outlaws with a single glance. Yet beneath this cinematic allure lies a stark truth. Far from the polished tales of valor, the Wild West was a gritty, chaotic world of brutal customs, raw violence, and unfiltered survival. Today, let us tell you about the Wild West without hushing up anything. You're watching Flip Side of History, and we continue our episode. An enemy scalp to earn money on the local Native Americans, who were called Redskins by the settlers because of the color of their skin, has long been a stereotype. It was believed that Native Americans attacked the settlements of colonial settlers to plunder, kill, and capture prisoners. The main proof of a warrior's valor was the scalp of an enemy, often a living one. But in reality, the originators of this truly dreadful process were not the natives at all, but the settlers themselves. The indigenous population was quite well developed in cultural terms. In terms of cleanliness and hygiene, they were, strangely enough to many, an upgrade over the white-skinned colonists. Moreover, Native American tribes were not as highly militant as the cinema portrayed them to be. They favored living in peace and harmony and were more engaged in trade than war. As proof, at that time, no one was surprised by mixed marriages, such as a cowboy and a Native American young woman, or a Native American young man and a white woman. The practice of scalping the enemy originated with the emergence of a stratum of workers, the so-called bounty hunters. In an effort to clear some territory of native tribes, local authorities often initiated a blatant policy of genocide against the Native Americans. So as not to waste the army's strength, they hired men to work for them, paying them about $25 for each killed Native American. It was not bad money at the time, so there was no shortage of volunteers. But how to convince an employer that you killed about a dozen Native Americans? Since there was supposed to be proof, you needed physical evidence, the scalp of the deceased. Only after the whites, over time, did the Native Americans themselves adopt this tradition, and the scalp of a murdered white man became one of the offerings to the local gods. This was demonstrated especially clearly when troops came to the aid of local settlers to suppress Native American resistance. At the time, any white person in the Wild West could feel relatively secure only in a fortified fort, and he had to sleep with a pistol under his pillow so he wouldn't be scalped while he slept. But again, it was white men themselves who instigated this awful tradition. Dirty doves. Taking into account the purely male population that originally went to America in search of fortune in the 19th century, there was a great insufficiency of women in the settler camps. In the year 1850, for instance, in California, men accounted for nearly 93% of the total population. Yet, strange as it sounds, the rights of good-hearted women who lived in formal marriages were frankly non-existent. For example, a woman had no right to own any property. But ladies of easy virtue, on the other hand, had so many rights and freedoms that women could not even dream of until much later in the first half of the 20th century. This was due to the tremendous shortage of the beautiful gender in the settler colonies. It must be said that women earned quite a lot. For comparison, in the mid-19th century, an ordinary worker received about $100 a month, a bank clerk about $125, but a prostitute earned starting from $300 and above. With this kind of revenue, women of easy virtue were able to achieve unprecedented rights and freedoms. In Helena, 24 banking credits were granted against real estate, and all 20 of them were obtained not by men but by women. They were called by many names: dirty doves, painted ladies, women of the night, and other no less romantic phrases. No wonder, obviously, that many women, simply to obtain rights and freedoms, willingly became ladies of easy behavior. The blossom of such a nominally professional occupation came in the beginning and middle of the 19th century. Later, when the number of women increased, the status of dirty doves declined sharply. They had to work either in special institutions or through specialized people, and their lifespan was rather short. if a woman did not die at the hands of an enraged client or from disease or tuberculosis. After losing her looks, her boss would throw her out into the street, where the poor woman would die in impoverishment. Crimes and penalties. The levels of crime in the Wild West were absolutely unbelievable. In California, 1 in 72 people were killed, and the safest state, Oregon, could boast that it had only 1 homicide in 208 people at the time. It is not so surprising, then, that farmers, cowboys, or locals themselves, not relying on the law, which by and large did not exist, ensured their own safety by their own means. In settlements, towns, and forts, either so-called militia squads were created, or locals periodically banded together to punish outlaws. The story that captured bandits were allegedly escorted to major cities for trial was just a myth. No one was going to be ceremonious with criminals at all, and they were usually punished on the spot in various ways with no mercy, much less any ethics, applied to the criminals who were caught. At best, the criminals were hanged in front of the entire town, and at worst, they were executed rather savagely. The more crimes the crook committed, the less chance he had of an easy death. History has also recorded the case of how the body of a captured murderer was turned into souvenirs. First, the locals hanged the bandit, then the skin was peeled off his body, which was dressed and cut into pieces, creating a limited edition collection of rather gruesome souvenirs. This criminal, we have to note, was still a lucky one. A paradox, but it was much more convenient for criminals to fall into the hands of the official authorities who would simply and humanely hang the defendant after the trial. If again the criminal fell into the hands of local residents, no one could guess what fate awaited him. Due to the diversity of the immigrant population, each had a memory of the killing traditions used in their own country. Therefore, the murderer could be staked if there was a tree, stoned, burned, or even quartered. Even going to an official prison frequently could not guarantee the criminal a soft and humane death. More than once, local residents, deciding that it was too long to wait for a trial and sentence, attacked prisons, dragged the criminal out, and administered justice themselves, paying no attention to the law or virtually anything else. The most humanized punishment of all, if there was insufficient proof of guilt, was the expulsion of the accused from the city. The fate of such a person, often a guiltless one, could be unenviable. Unless he succeeded in making it to the next island of civilization, he might die from starvation at the hands of outlaws, become a victim of wild animals, or fall to some violent group of Native Americans. The intolerance. Those who proclaimed a religion other than the one prevalent in the town or city were considered second-class citizens. For example, a Catholic or Jew in a Protestant town was considered inferior in status, so the likelihood of this person's death was extremely high. Corruption and the rickety service. Many officers of the law, in this case sheriffs, who received a mere pittance as their official wages, took bribes for any service, and sometimes committed crimes themselves. There was a famous case when Sheriff Henry Newton Brown was ordered to catch a bunch of thieves, except that the sheriff and his sidekicks robbed the bank themselves instead. Besides, sheriffs were the pioneers of racketeering, offering saloons, inns, and other establishments perceived protection for a handsome fee. In real life, therefore, the sheriff was the last resort to which locals could turn for protection. For the most part, they dealt with crime themselves or turned to the detective agency of the infamous Pinkerton. The gracious gunfights. The well-known duels of cowboys are also nothing more than a beautiful fiction. In fact, most duels were the result of drunken disagreements in taverns. During duels, there was no honor at all. One of the parties could shoot first at any moment at will or even shoot in the back. Finally, friends could also come to the duel, and then outright chaos erupted. In essence, more like a minor war. Thank you for watching our episode. Subscribe, leave a like, and expect more videos on flip side of history. Apart from that, watch our other videos on the channel.